Imagine the Earth not as it is today, but as it once was. A single landmass stretching endlessly across the horizon. All the continents you know now joined together as one. This was Pangea, a supercontinent that existed more than 200 million years ago, long before mountains, seas and coastlines shaped themselves into the familiar outlines we see on maps today. Take a slow breath and picture it. The land extended in every direction, unbroken, continuous. No Atlantic Ocean, no Pacific dividing east from west. Instead, a vast sweep of connected Earth. You could have walked in theory from what is now New York, across to Morocco, from modern-day Brazil into the deserts of South Africa. The continents we recognize today were once neighbors, pressed tightly together like pieces of a puzzle, waiting to be pulled apart. It was a world both close and immense. Close, because the land was united. Immense, because the interior of Pangea stretched so far from the coasts that rain could rarely reach its heart. The center of the continent was harsh, dry, and quiet. Deserts wider than the Sahara of today spread out in every direction. Red sands glowed beneath the sun. Winds sculpted rocks into strange shapes. Clouds were scarce, and rivers were rare. Life in this heartland was fragile. Only the hardiest plants and creatures endured, clinging to the dust and stone. Yet, on the edges of Pangea, the world softened. Forests rose, green and dense. Rivers wound their way to the sea. Wetlands steamed in the sun, thick, humid, alive. Within these swamps, strange creatures stirred. Some crawled, some swam, some hunted. Not yet dinosaurs, but their ancestors. Early reptiles with long tails and sharp teeth. Amphibians sliding quietly into the water. Life was experimenting here, finding new shapes, testing what might work, what might survive. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The splash of something entering a pool, the call of a reptile echoing from the reeds, the quiet shuffle of claws over wet earth. Above you, the sky would not be still. Insects filled the air, many larger than the ones you know today. Dragonflies with wings wider than your hand drifted on warm breezes. Beetles gleamed like jewels when the sunlight touched them. The hum of wings was constant, as though the air itself was alive. Further north, the land rose into forests of towering conifers, older than any redwood alive now. These giants stretched skyward, their canopies weaving a ceiling of needles. Their roots sank deep into the soil. Their trunks were wide, sturdy, unmoving. The wind whispered through them, low, endless, steady, a sound like breath across the world. Beneath their branches, the forest floor was shadowed and still. Small mammal-like creatures darted from cover to cover. Early reptiles crept cautiously, blending with fallen needles and moss. It was a place of silence, broken only by the movements of those trying to survive. And then mountains. Some sharp and jagged, freshly risen where land had collided. Others softened by age, their edges worn down, their peaks rounded. Volcanic ranges smoked against the horizon, ash falling across valleys, destroying but also feeding the earth. From this ash, soil rich with minerals gave rise to new growth. Life always returned, patient, steady, even after fire and stone had swept it away. Pangea was not just land. Around it stretched a single vast ocean, Panthalassa, an endless expanse of water surrounding the supercontinent. Its waves beat against the shores, shaping cliffs, feeding rivers, carrying storms. Within its depths, creatures older still drifted. Sharks patrolled its currents. Ammonites with coiled shells floated and sank. Giant reptiles swam through the deep, hunting, feeding, living in a world apart from the land above. To stand at the edge of Pangea and look outward, you would see no familiar continents across the water. Only the endless horizon. Only the shimmer of Panthalassa. A reminder that Earth then was both bound together and impossibly vast. To imagine Pangea fully is to imagine a world caught between beginnings and endings. The Earth was restless then. Continents had collided to form this single landmass, but deep below, forces still pulled and shifted. The ground trembled. Volcanoes rose and fell. Fault lines stretched quietly, unseen, waiting for the moment when the supercontinent would begin to break apart. And yet on the surface life continued. Plants grew where they could. Forests spread across the wetter coasts. Swamps steamed in the sun. Rivers carved their paths. And in these places life thrived. Picture standing on the edge of a Pangean river. The water moves slowly, heavy with silt. Along its banks ferns rise high, their fronds reaching for the light. Dragonflies skim the surface, their wings catching the glow. In the shadows, amphibians wait, some as small as your hand, others far larger, lurking just below the waterline, their eyes breaking the surface only when they move. Not far away, the first ancestors of dinosaurs leave their tracks in soft mud. They are not giants yet. Their bodies are small, their movements cautious, but they are fast, alert, aware of danger. In time, their descendants will grow into creatures that dominate the planet. For now, they are just one part of a world still experimenting. The air carries scents you would recognize: pine from the forests, damp earth from the riverbanks, smoke from distant volcanoes. But mixed with them are smells now long vanished: the musk of ancient reptiles, the heavy odor of swamps untouched by time, the sharp tang of minerals rising from freshly cooled lava. A world both familiar and utterly strange. Night would have fallen differently too. Without city lights, without human fire scattered across the land, the stars above Pangea burned brighter than you have ever seen. The Milky Way stretched clear across the sky, mirrored in the dark water of Panthalassa. Strange calls echoed from the forests. Insects hummed into the night, and the air cooled slowly, gently, until the land rested in silence. But silence never lasted long on Earth. Storms rolled in from the great ocean. Winds swept across the landmass. Rains battered the forests, feeding rivers that swelled and then shrank again. Lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the mountains. For creatures of the time, this was life. Endless cycles of heat and storm, of fire and growth. The shape of Pangea itself tells us something about life then. The closeness of land meant species could spread widely. A creature born on one edge of the supercontinent could, over generations, travel to another edge. Animals roamed freely. Plants spread their seeds far. Evolution unfolded across a connected world, unhindered by the barriers of oceans. But this closeness also meant fragility. When climates shifted, when deserts expanded, when volcanic ash blocked sunlight, when oceans warmed or cooled, vast regions of the continent changed at once. Entire habitats vanished. Species disappeared. Others adapted, taking their place. This constant push and pull shaped the story of life, leaving behind fossils that whisper to us today. If you could wander deeper into Pangea, you would find regions where tectonic plates pressed so tightly that mountains rose almost overnight. Peaks jagged and sharp, their flanks stained with iron, their summits hidden by clouds. Snow fell on some of these heights, even while deserts blazed not so far away. Imagine standing at the base of such a mountain, looking upward, the sheer scale overwhelming, the sense of Earth's power undeniable. And then volcanoes. Some small, smoking quietly, others vast, tearing open the land, sending rivers of lava across valleys. The sky darkened with ash. For days, sometimes for months, sunlight dimmed. The world cooled. Then slowly warmth returned, and life began again. Volcanic soil, rich and fertile, fed new forests. Life always returned, always adapted. Along the coasts, the story was different still. Here, the supercontinent met the endless ocean. The shoreline stretched for thousands of miles, a band between land and sea. Waves carved cliffs, ground stone into sand, carried shells and sea creatures to the edge of the continent. Tide pools formed, full of strange life: crabs with ancient shapes, mollusks with shells curled tightly, creatures that would one day vanish forever, leaving only fossils as their memory. Beneath the waves, the ocean teemed with life. Ammonites, with their coiled shells, drifted in spirals. Sharks, sleek and silent, patrolled the waters. Ichthyosaurs, great reptiles built for the sea, swam like living torpedoes, chasing fish, breaching the surface for air before diving once more. The ocean was a world as complex, as dangerous, and as full of mystery as the land above. Standing there, on the coast of Pangea, the scale of it would have been overwhelming. Behind you, an endless continent. Before you, an endless ocean. Around you, the sounds of life. Insects humming, reptiles calling, waves breaking against the shore, and above stars burning brighter than any you have ever known. Pangea was not permanent. Deep within the earth, forces gathered. Slowly, over millions of years, cracks spread through the supercontinent. Valleys opened. Seas formed. Land drifted. The puzzle pieces began to move apart, pulled by the currents of the planet itself. What was once one would become many. But in the time of Pangea, Earth was whole. One land, one ocean, a world unlike any we will ever see again. So close your eyes and imagine it once more. The deserts at the center, hot, dry, endless. The forests on the coasts, green, dense, alive. The rivers winding to the sea. The mountains rising sharp against the horizon. The volcanoes smoking. The insects humming. The reptiles moving through shadow and swamp. The ocean beyond, endless and deep. And above it all, the stars. This was Earth in the time of Pangea. Before Pangea, there were other worlds, other arrangements of land and sea. The Earth has always shifted, slowly, endlessly, never still, never fixed. What we see today, the continents scattered across oceans, is just one frame in a film that has been playing for billions of years. Go back further in time, more than 400 million years ago, and you would not see Pangea. Instead, smaller continents drifted across the globe, scattered, separate. They had names we rarely speak now: Laurentia, Gondwana, Baltica, Siberia. Islands, fragments, wandering pieces of Earth's crust. For millions of years, these fragments drifted, moved closer, collided. And with every collision, mountains rose, oceans closed, and life adjusted. It was these collisions that gave birth to Pangea. Piece by piece, land joined to land, until at last there was only one. By around 335 million years ago, the puzzle was complete. The continents had locked together, forming a single vast supercontinent. The Earth was whole. Imagine watching this happen, not in human years, not in lifetimes, but in the slow rhythm of deep time. To our eyes it would seem invisible, land drifting only centimeters each year. But across millions of years those centimeters became miles, and miles became journeys across oceans. Mountains rose where seas once shimmered. Valleys opened where mountains once stood. Nothing permanent. Nothing fixed. Only movement. And so Pangea was formed. For millions of years life flourished upon it. But beneath the surface, deep inside the Earth, forces were already at work. The same forces that had created Pangea would one day undo it. The crust of the Earth floats on molten rock, shifting slowly, driven by heat rising from below. These movements, tectonic plates, push and pull against one another. When they collide, mountains form. When they pull apart, oceans are born. The surface may look solid, but it is always drifting. Pangea was not immune. Even at its height, cracks began to form. At first they were small, rifts in the land where molten rock pushed upward, splitting stone apart. Valleys opened. Lakes gathered in the low places. Over millions of years those rifts widened. Water seeped in. Seas began to form, cutting into the heart of the continent. Slowly, almost unnoticeably, Pangea began to break. But to those living upon it then, the reptiles, the amphibians, the early ancestors of dinosaurs, the land still seemed endless. They did not know the ground beneath their feet was moving. To them, the deserts stretched forever, the forests rose without end, the rivers wound their steady way to the sea. Only the earth itself knew the truth that nothing lasts forever. As the land shifted, so did the climate. The interior deserts grew harsher. Winds blew stronger. Storms from the ocean rolled deeper inland. Some regions cooled, while others grew hotter. Life adapted, some creatures growing larger, some shrinking, some disappearing entirely. Extinction was always near, yet life always returned in new forms. If you stood on Pangea during its middle age, you might see familiar outlines hidden in the shapes of the land. The curve of South America pressed against the bulge of Africa. North America tucked against Europe. India joined to Antarctica, waiting for the day it would journey north to collide with Asia. It is strange to think, but if you trace the edges carefully, you could almost predict the world to come. And then, around 175 million years ago, the rift widened. The Atlantic Ocean began its slow birth. At first only a narrow channel of water cutting into the continent, then wider, deeper, stretching further with each passing million years. Pangea, once whole, was dividing. To the creatures of the time, it was simply the world. They did not see a continent breaking, only coastlines changing, rivers finding new paths, forests shifting as climates moved. But to us, looking back, it is the story of separation, the beginning of the world we know today. The breakup of Pangea was not sudden. It was slow, patient, drawn out over tens of millions of years. Gondwana drifted south. Laurasia spread to the north. Oceans widened. Islands formed. And the shapes of modern continents began to appear, piece by piece, as if Earth itself were painting a new picture, brushstroke by brushstroke. Even now the movement continues. The continents drift a few centimeters each year. The Atlantic widens. The Pacific shifts. One day, millions of years from now, the land will join again in a new supercontinent. Pangea was not the first, and it will not be the last. Earth is always in motion. But for the time it existed, Pangea was extraordinary. One land, one ocean, a world united, and yet always preparing to change. Close your eyes and imagine it again, the vast desert heart, dry and endless, the forests thick along the coasts, the swamps steaming, alive with reptiles and amphibians, the mountains rising where continents had collided, volcanoes smoking, their ash falling over valleys, rivers winding toward the sea, and all around the great ocean of Panthalassa, stretching forever. This was Earth in the age of Pangea. Life on Pangea was unlike anything you know today. The land was both harsh and fertile, deserts stretching endlessly, and yet forests thriving along the coasts. In every corner, creatures found a way to survive. Some small, fragile, hidden. Others bold, strong, and destined to shape the story of Earth. In the rivers and swamps, amphibians ruled. Their bodies slick, their skin cool, they drifted between water and land. Some were small, no larger than your hand, while others stretched longer than a grown person. They lingered near the water's edge, waiting for insects, for fish, for anything that stirred close enough. Their calls echoed through the humid air, strange voices in a world not yet finished. Alongside them moved reptiles. Not yet the great dinosaurs, but their ancestors. Long tails swayed as they walked. Claws scratched against stone and soil. Teeth gleamed in the sunlight. They hunted, they scavenged, they adapted. Every generation they grew stronger. In time they would rise as the rulers of the earth. But in Pangea's early days they were just one part of a vast experiment of life. Close your eyes and picture it. A clearing in the forest. The air warm and damp. Ferns rising tall, their fronds curling outward like green feathers. Insects hum in the background, wings flashing as they dart between leaves. From the shadows a reptile emerges. Small, quick, alert. Its eyes scan the ground, its body tense, ready to strike at movement. For a moment the forest holds its breath. Then the rustle of another creature, and the chase begins. The forests of Pangea were filled with plants both strange and familiar. Giant conifers towered overhead, their needles falling in soft carpets. Cycads grew thick, their crowns spreading wide. Ferns covered the ground, endless, lush, alive. In the swamps, horsetail plants rose like green pillars, hollow stems reaching for the light. It was a world of green, but not the green you know today. There were no flowering plants yet, no grasses underfoot. The forests were ancient in shape and smell, filled with plants older than the flowers you see in your garden. And in these forests, insects thrived. Some were enormous compared to those you know now. Dragonflies, their wings wider than your hand, skimmed over lakes and rivers. Beetles gleamed in the sun, their shells strong, their colours bright. The air buzzed with life, a constant chorus of wings. At night, strange shapes moved through the shadows, creatures crawling across bark, clicking, chirping, whispering into the dark. The deserts too had life. Though the heart of Pangea was harsh, animals found a way. Small reptiles scuttled between rocks, hiding from the heat. Insects burrowed deep, waiting for cooler nights. At dusk, when the air softened, creatures emerged, hunting, feeding, living quickly before the heat returned. Even in the harshest places, life endured. And in the oceans around Pangea, the story grew larger still. Ichthyosaurs swam like shadows beneath the waves, sleek and powerful, their bodies built for speed. Plesiosaurs drifted through deeper waters, long necks stretching as they searched for prey. Ammonites, with their spiraled shells, floated in the currents, rising and sinking with the tide. Sharks, ancient and silent, patrolled the depths. The sea was alive, as full of mystery as the land itself. But on Pangea, something extraordinary was beginning. Small, quick reptiles, unlike any before them, were evolving. They walked upright, balanced on strong legs, their bodies light, their movements fast. These were the first dinosaurs, still small, still rare, but destined to grow, destined to change the world. Imagine seeing one. Not the towering giants of later ages, but a creature the size of a dog, thin, fast, its tail stretched behind it, its eyes bright with awareness. It darts between ferns, chasing an insect. Its claws scratch at the ground. Its head turns sharply at every sound. Fragile and yet unstoppable. These are the beginnings of a dynasty that would last for more than 150 million years. Over time, these early dinosaurs spread across Pangea. They lived in the forests, the swamps, the open plains. They grew larger. They grew stronger. Some hunted. Some grazed. Some filled roles that no creature had taken before. On this vast continent, they had room to evolve, to expand, to rise. And above them the sky changed too. The first pterosaurs appeared, reptiles that had learnt to fly. Their wings stretched wide, thin membranes supported by long fingers. They glided over rivers, swooped down to snatch fish, soared above forests. The air was no longer just for insects. It belonged to reptiles as well. The skies of Pangea were alive with wings, buzzing insects, gliding pterosaurs, and the distant cries of creatures learning to master the air. It is strange to think of it now. The forests without flowers, the plains without grass, the oceans without whales or dolphins, the skies without birds. And yet, in Pangea, these things did not exist. The world was young, unfinished, still forming the shapes we would one day recognize. And in that unfinished world, life moved forward, slowly, patiently, one step at a time. So when you think of Pangea, remember not only the land itself, but the creatures that lived upon it. Amphibians in the swamps, reptiles in the forests, insects in the skies, early dinosaurs rising from the shadows. Together they created a world both strange and familiar, a world we can still glimpse today in the fossils buried beneath our feet. This was life, in the time of Pangea. The world of Pangea was not gentle. It was beautiful, yes, vast, diverse, alive with possibility. But its climate was extreme. For all the richness of its forests and swamps, for all the creatures that stirred in its rivers and oceans, the land was also marked by hardship. Deserts stretched across the center. Storms battered the coasts. And in the north and south, ice lingered through the seasons. To understand Pangea is to understand contrast. The land was unified, one great mass, but its climates could not have been more different. In one place endless drought, in another unbroken rain, in one corner volcanic fire, in another frozen silence. This was Earth in the time of Pangea, a world of extremes. At the center of the continent lay its greatest hardship, the interior deserts. Imagine standing there, thousands of miles from the nearest ocean. No sea breezes carried moisture this far inland. No storms drifted to break the silence. The air was hot, dry, heavy. The sky shimmered with heat. The ground cracked beneath the sun. Rivers, if they formed at all, dried quickly, leaving behind only channels of dust and stone. These deserts were not small patches of dryness. They stretched across the heart of the continent, wider than the Sahara of today, more relentless, more punishing. The soil was red with iron, burned by sun and wind. Rocks jutted upward like broken teeth. Sand dunes rolled across the horizon, and in this vast emptiness, life clung on only at the edges. Small reptiles scuttled between stones, seeking shade. Insects burrowed deep into the ground, waiting for the cool of night. Plants were rare, low shrubs, tough, dry, each one a survivor of a land that seemed to resist life itself. And yet, even here, life found its rhythm. At night, when the air cooled, creatures emerged. The desert floor stirred. The stars above burned brighter than anywhere else, sharp against the black sky. Insects hummed. Reptiles hunted. A fragile balance of survival, life in the quiet heart of Pangea. Move outward, away from the center, and the story changed. The coasts of Pangea were wet, warm, fertile. Here, storms rolled in from the ocean of Panthalassa. Winds carried moisture. Clouds gathered, heavy with rain. Forests grew thick, rivers swelled, swamps steamed in the heat. These coastal regions were alive with sound, the calls of amphibians, the buzz of insects, the rustle of reptiles moving through ferns. In contrast to the silent deserts, the coasts were vibrant, lush, abundant. Rain fell often, sometimes gently, sometimes in torrents. Floods shaped the land. Swamps expanded. Rivers shifted their courses. And each shift brought new life. Insects thrived. Reptiles multiplied. Early dinosaurs stalked the forests. For creatures of Pangea, survival was a matter of place. The center unforgiving, the coasts generous. But the climate was not only divided between desert and forest. To the north and south, Pangea reached into cooler zones. Here, ice gripped the land. Glaciers carved valleys. Snow blanketed the ground in long winters. Trees grew shorter, hardier, clinging to life against the cold. The animals here adapted differently. They grew thicker skins, slower movements, more endurance. Life in these regions was not about growth or abundance, but endurance. To survive the cold was to master patience. The contrasts across Pangea were vast. In one part you could stand in silence beneath a burning sun, the desert stretching endless around you. In another you could walk through a swamp so dense with insects and calls of creatures that you could not hear your own footsteps. And in yet another, you could feel the crunch of ice beneath your feet, the cold air biting at your skin. One continent, many worlds. And then there were the storms. On a landmass this size, weather patterns grew powerful. Winds swept across thousands of miles without interruption. Storms gathered over Panthalassa, then struck the coasts of Pangea with force. Rain fell for days. Lightning split the sky. Thunder rolled across valleys and forests. Rivers swelled until they overflowed. Lowlands drowned. For the creatures of Pangea, these storms were both life-giving and dangerous. They brought water, but they also brought destruction. Forests fell. Swamps shifted. Creatures perished. And yet always, life returned. Volcanoes added to the drama. Smoke and ash rose into the air, darkening the sky for weeks at a time. Sunlight dimmed. Temperatures dropped. In some places, plants withered. Creatures struggled to adapt. But when the eruptions ceased, the land was renewed. Volcanic ash enriched the soil, feeding new forests, creating new opportunities for life to flourish. Destruction and renewal, the cycle repeated endlessly. Pangea's climate was not gentle, but it was creative. It tested life. It forced adaptation. Species rose, changed, vanished. Some grew larger, stronger, able to cross deserts or endure storms. Others grew smaller, quicker, able to hide, to escape, to survive. The harshness of the climate shaped evolution, guiding life down paths that would one day lead to the dominance of dinosaurs. If you could stand anywhere on Pangea and simply watch, you would see these patterns unfold. In the desert, silence at noon, movement at night. On the coasts, forests steaming in the sun, alive with sound. In the north, snow falling, a hush over the land. At the edge of a swamp, the sudden violence of a storm. Lightning striking, water rising, then slowly retreating. Each place different. Each place alive. And always, above it all, the stars. Without human lights, without cities, the night sky of Pangea would have been breathtaking. In the desert center, stars sharp and unbroken. On the coast, their light reflected in rivers and swamps. In the north, the auroras dancing faintly across the sky. For the creatures of the time, the stars meant nothing. But for us, imagining now, they remind us of the scale of time. Pangea lived under the same stars we see today. Yet the land, the oceans, the life below were utterly different. The climate of Pangea shaped its story. It was not a world of balance or gentleness, but of extremes. And in those extremes, life endured, adapted, changed. What we know today, the diversity of species, the spread of life across continents was forged in that crucible. Heat, drought, storm, ice, destruction and renewal, silence and abundance. This was Earth in the age of Pangea. Pangea was not eternal. Nothing on Earth is not mountains, not seas, not even continents. From the moment it formed, deep forces beneath the surface were already pulling at it, stretching, bending, preparing, quietly for the day it would break apart. The land seemed solid, vast, endless, unmoving, but it was never still. Beneath it, the Earth's mantle stirred. Heat rose. Rock moved. Tectonic plates pushed against one another or drifted apart. Slowly, almost invisibly, the surface cracked. At first, these cracks were small, narrow rifts opening where pressure pushed hardest. Valleys formed, lakes gathered in the low places, molten rock welled up from below. For millions of years, these rifts deepened. To the creatures walking above, nothing seemed unusual. The forests still grew. The deserts still stretched. The swamps still steamed. But the land beneath their feet was already shifting. Around 200 million years ago, the first true signs of Pangea's breakup began. The continent split into two vast parts, Laurasia to the north, Gondwana to the south. Between them, a widening rift, a wound in the earth that would in time become the Atlantic Ocean. At first it was only a narrow channel, shallow, scattered with lakes, fringed with new coastlines. But slowly, patiently, the water spread. Each century, each millennium, the rift widened. Rivers drained into it. Rain fed it. The sea moved inward, filling the gap. The Atlantic was being born. Imagine standing there, at the edge of this newborn sea. Behind you, forests and deserts stretched across a continent that had once been whole. Before you, waves lapped at a new coastline, where land had split. You would not know it then, but you were watching the beginning of an ocean that one day would separate continents, carry ships, connect worlds. As the rift widened, the continents drifted. Africa moved east. South America drifted west. North America shifted northward. Each piece carried with it forests, rivers, deserts, and all the creatures living there. Life that had once been united began to separate. Species that roamed across Pangea now found themselves divided. Over millions of years, these divisions would shape evolution, creating new paths, new forms, new destinies. The breakup did not happen all at once. It was slow, unimaginably slow. First, the split between Laurasia and Gondwana. Then, Gondwana itself began to divide. South America pulled away from Africa. India began its long journey north. Australia drifted east. Antarctica slid south into colder waters where ice would one day grip it tightly. Each movement was measured in centimeters each year, a pace so slow you could live an entire lifetime and never notice it. And yet, given millions of years, those centimeters became thousands of miles. Oceans widened, continents drifted. The map of Earth redrew itself over and over again, and with each change the climate shifted. New coastlines created new weather. Winds carried rain into places that had once been deserts. Other regions, cut off from moisture, grew dry. Forests died. Swamps shrank. New habitats emerged. Life adapted, some species perishing, others flourishing. The Earth was restless, and life followed its rhythm. By 150 million years ago, the Atlantic Ocean had grown wide. Dinosaurs now roamed across Laurasia and Gondwana, but their worlds were beginning to differ. In one place, vast plains of conifers stretched beneath stormy skies. In another, deserts grew harsh, challenging survival. Evolution moved in different directions, guided by the separation of land. By 100 million years ago, the continents were even farther apart. South America drifted far from Africa. India raced northward, faster than any other landmass on a collision course with Asia. That collision, millions of years later, would thrust up the Himalayas, the tallest mountains on Earth. Australia separated, carrying with it unique species that would evolve in isolation. Antarctica moved south, cloaked eventually in snow and ice. The world was changing, the shapes of the continents beginning to resemble the map we know today. Pangea was gone. In its place was a new Earth, divided but full of possibility. And yet, even now, the story is not finished. The continents still drift. The Atlantic still widens. The Pacific slowly shrinks. One day, millions of years in the future, the land will come together again. Another supercontinent will form, different from Pangea, but born of the same forces. Pangea was only one chapter in a longer story, a story of endless motion, of breaking and rejoining, of creation and destruction. Earth has done this before, and it will do it again. So when you think of Pangea, imagine not only its deserts and forests, its rivers and swamps, but also the slow rhythm of its birth and its long, patient breakup. Imagine the cracks spreading silently beneath your feet, the seas forming where once there was only land, the continents drifting quietly apart are carrying life into new worlds. Earth was never still, and it never will be. Life on Pangea was always changing. For the creatures that roamed its forests, its deserts, its swamps, and its coasts, every day was a quiet balance between survival and adaptation. To us, the changes of continents splitting and drifting feel slow, stretched across millions of years, but for the animals that lived there, each day still brought challenge, still brought choice, still brought the endless rhythm of life. Imagine a forest on the edge of a forming coastline. The air is heavy, warm, damp with the scent of rain. Ferns crowd the ground, their fronds reaching outward. Towering conifers rise above, their branches weaving a canopy that filters the light. The forest hums with sound. Insects buzz. Amphibians call from the water. Small reptiles scurry between shadows. And somewhere the quick steps of an early dinosaur echo softly, its body light, its movements careful. For these creatures, daily life is a dance with the forest. Each insect searching for food, each reptile waiting in silence for prey, each dinosaur scanning for danger. The forest offers cover but also risk. Behind every fern, a hunter might wait. In every pool, something larger may lurk. To live here is to listen, to move with caution, to use every sense. Now picture the desert heart of Pangea. Daylight burns fiercely, the sun pressing down without mercy. The the ground cracks with dryness. The wind whips across dunes, shifting the sand, covering tracks almost as quickly as they are made. Life here survives in silence. Small reptiles bury themselves in sand to escape the heat. Insects hide in burrows, waiting for night. Plants cling to life, low, thorny, each drop of water carefully guarded. When evening comes, the desert wakes. The air cools. The stars bloom overhead, sharp and endless. Reptiles emerge from their hiding places. Insects crawl across the sand. Predators search the ground for movement. Life in the desert is fleeting. Each night a narrow window of survival before the heat returns with the morning sun. Along the coasts, the story feels different. Here the ocean shapes daily life. Waves roll against the land carrying salt and foam. Tides rise and fall. The air is thick with the cries of creatures. Amphibians linger in the shallows, slipping between water and earth. Pterosaurs glide overhead, their wings stretched wide, their shadows passing silently across the sand. Insects fill the air, swarming in clouds that glitter in the sunlight. And beneath the waves, shadows move, fish darting, ammonites drifting, larger predators sweeping silently through the deep. For creatures here, every day is shaped by the sea. The tide brings food, but also danger. Storms rise suddenly, battering the shore with wind and water. Rivers swell with rain, carrying silt and life into the ocean. And the forest edges are always shifting, roots flooded, trees falling, new ground exposed. To live here is to accept change. The sea gives. The sea takes. As Pangea began to break apart, daily life carried on, but the land itself was shifting beneath the feet of its creatures. New lakes appeared where rifts opened. Rivers found new paths. Forests that had once stretched endlessly were cut by valleys divided by rising waters. Animals that once roamed freely found their ranges separated. Populations divided, and slowly over generations they grew different. One species became two. Two became many. Evolution followed the path of drifting land. But for the animals themselves, these great changes felt only like weather, only like seasons. They did not know they lived on a continent breaking apart. They only knew the forest before them, the river at their feet, the desert at their backs. Each day was lived in the present, the search for food, the need for shelter, the avoidance of predators. Picture an early dinosaur, small, swift, light. It wakes with the morning light. The forest air is cool, damp with dew. It stretches, its body tense, its eyes sharp. Hunger drives it into the clearing, where insects hum and small reptiles move in the shadows. Every step is careful, every sound tested against instinct. It hunts quickly, striking at movement, catching what it can. By midday, it retreats into the cover of trees, avoiding the heat, waiting for the evening cool. Its life is simple, but in its simplicity lies survival. Now picture a plesiosaur in the ocean. Its long neck sweeps through the water as it searches for fish. The sea is calm, the waves gentle. Schools of fish shimmer, flashing silver in the light. It lunges forward, mouth open, catching prey in a single swift motion. Then it drifts upward, breaking the surface, filling its lungs with air before diving again. Its world is water, endless, moving, deep. The ocean gives it food. The ocean carries it onward. The ocean is its home. Every creature on Pangea, no matter how large or small, lived by this rhythm, a balance between hunger and safety, between light and darkness, between the changing land and the endless sea. For them the future did not exist. There was only the moment, only the forest, the desert, the swamp, the tide. And yet, in living this way, they shaped the world. Each step left tracks in mud that hardened into stone. Each shell left behind became a fossil buried in sand. Each tooth, each bone, each leaf pressed into earth became a record. And millions of years later, those records would whisper their story to us. Life on Pangea was not easy. It was not gentle, but it was constant, flowing like the rivers, rising like the mountains, shifting like the continents themselves. Day by day, moment by moment, creatures lived, adapted, survived. And in their survival, they carried the story of Earth forward. This was daily life in the age of Pangea. The forests of Pangea were unlike any you know today. They were green. Yes, dense, alive, filled with the breath of plants and the hum of creatures. But they were also ancient, shaped by forms that no longer exist. Plants older than flowers, older than grasses, older even than many of the trees we know now. Walk with me, slowly, into one of these forests. The air is warm, thick with moisture, heavy with the scent of resin and earth. The ground is soft, layered with fallen needles and ferns. Above, towering conifers rise into the sky, their trunks straight, their branches narrow, their canopies spreading like green umbrellas. Their roots dig deep into the soil, anchoring them against storms. Around them grow cycadods, plants with thick trunks and crowns of stiff leaves, their shape strange, almost alien. And covering the ground, endless ferns, fronds curling outward, their patterns repeating like delicate lace. There are no flowers here, no blossoms to draw the eye, no grasses underfoot. The forest of Pangea is older than that, quieter, darker, more ancient in its design. It is a world of green upon green, deep shades, soft textures, shadows beneath the canopy. And within this green world, insects rule. Their hum fills the air, a constant chorus rising and falling like music. Dragonflies, vast and shimmering, drift on warm currents. Their wings stretch wider than your hand, catching the sunlight, flashing as they turn. They skim over rivers, hover above ferns, dart swiftly to catch smaller insects. To see one is to watch flight perfected, light, graceful, silent except for the faintest whisper of wings. Beetles crawl along trunks, their shells shining like jewels, deep reds, blacks, metallic greens. Some as small as the beetles you know now, others much larger, their legs thick, their mandibles sharp. They dig into bark, feed on wood, leave trails of life behind them. Ant-like creatures march in lines, carrying fragments of plants, building hidden nests beneath the soil. And then, in the shadows, something larger moves. A millipede, its body long, segmented, armored. Legs ripple in waves as it crawls across the ground, slow, steady, patient. It disappears beneath the ferns, leaving only a faint rustle behind. The air itself is thick with wings, mosquito-like insects hovering clouds, their long bodies shimmering as they drift. Small flies dart quickly from shadow to light. Crickets sing in the undergrowth, their calls echoing softly in the night. At dusk the sound grows louder, a chorus of clicks, chirps, hums and buzzes, filling the forest until it feels alive, vibrating with sound. In the swamps the insects grow even larger. Giant mayflies drift above the water, their wings delicate, their bodies fragile, their lives brief but beautiful. Mosquitoes circle in swarms, rising and falling like mist. Near the surface, water beetles glide, their legs paddling gently, their bodies leaving ripples as they pass. Every pool, every reed, every branch holds life. To walk through these forests is to be surrounded by wings, by movement, by sound. You feel the brush of air as a dragonfly passes near your ear. You hear the rustle of beetles moving beneath bark. You smell the damp earth stirred by insects burrowing in the soil. The forest is not silent, it is alive, constant, endless. The plants shape this world too. Without flowers, without seeds as we know them, reproduction is slower, stranger. Ferns release spores into the air, tiny drifting particles carried by wind and water. Cycads drop cones heavy with seeds, their shapes rough, their surfaces armoured. Conifers scatter their cones, releasing seeds that fall to the ground or ride the wind to new soil. Life spreads slowly, patiently, without the colour and scent of flowers, without the speed of pollinating bees. And yet, the system works. The forests grow dense. The swamps expand. The plants of Pangea may be ancient, but they are successful. They cover the land in green, they feed the insects, they shelter the reptiles, they shape the air itself. Each breath you take here carries the scent of resin, of pine, of damp soil. The plants of Pangea define the world. Imagine sitting beneath one of these great conifers, the forest stretching around you. You hear the hum of insects, the rustle of ferns, the occasional call of a reptile in the distance. Light filters down through the canopy in narrow beams, catching the wings of dragonflies as they pass. A millipede crawls slowly across your foot, its many legs moving in perfect rhythm. A beetle lands on a fallen branch nearby, its shell gleaming, its antennae twitching. The forest is calm, and yet alive with endless quiet motion. At night, the forest changes. The insects do not sleep, their calls continue. Softer now, a background hum. The air cools, but only slightly. Mist rises from the swamps, curling around the trunks, drifting across the forest floor. In the darkness, the movements of insects glow faintly, some carrying bioluminescence, small sparks of light drifting through the shadows. It is not bright, not like fireflies today, but faint, gentle like embers carried on the air. Above, the stars shine through gaps in the canopy. The Milky Way stretches wide, reflected faintly in pools of swamp water. The calls of amphibians echo deep and resonant, joining the endless hum of insects. The forest of Pangea at night is not silent, it is a symphony, soft, constant, alive. And as you listen, you realize these creatures, these insects, these plants shaped the world. They fed the reptiles, the early dinosaurs, the amphibians. They built the foundation of life. Their spores, their seeds, their bodies sinking into the soil became part of the earth itself. The air you breathe now, the forests that cover the world today, they began here in these ancient green worlds filled with insects humming in the light. This was the forest of Pangea, a place of giants, of ancient plants, of endless wings. Above the forests of Pangea, above the deserts, the rivers, the swamps, stretched a sky both familiar and strange. The same sun rose each morning, the same sun you see today, but the world beneath it was different. The same moon drifted through the night, pulling at the seas, lighting the forests with silver, but its glow fell on landscapes long vanished. And the same stars shone in the heavens, ancient and constant, but they looked down on creatures just beginning their long journey through time. The skies of Pangea were alive. During the day, insects filled the air, dragonflies with wings as wide as your hand, beetles buzzing, mayflies drifting. But above them, higher, faster, stranger creatures had begun to take flight. These were the first pterosaurs, reptiles that had learned to master the air. Their wings were not like those of birds, no feathers, no soft down. Instead, their wings were made of skin, stretched taut over long, extended fingers. Thin, delicate, but strong enough to catch the wind. They glided over rivers, soared above forests, swept across swamps. Some small, the size of sparrows. Others larger, their wings stretching longer than a person is tall. They were the first rulers of the sky. Picture one now, circling high above a Pangean forest. Below, shadows stretch between conifers. Ferns crowd the ground. Reptiles move silently. But above, the pterosaur rides a current of air, its wings steady, its head turning slowly. It sees everything, the glint of water, the movement of prey, the shimmer of insects rising in clouds. With a sudden dip, it folds its wings slightly, swoops downward, and snaps up a fish from the surface of a river. Then, with a powerful beat, it rises again, climbing into the endless blue. The sky was their domain. From dawn until dusk, they glided, soared, and hunted. Some lived near the coast, feeding on fish, diving into the waves. Others haunted rivers inland, snatching insects from the air. They were agile, graceful, the first great experiment in flight. And though birds would one day inherit the skies, here, in the age of Pangea, it was pterosaurs that ruled the air. But flight was not only for the hunters. Insects filled the skies in swarms. Dragonflies darted quickly, catching smaller prey in mid-air. Clouds of mosquitoes and flies rose above swamps, drifting in shimmering veils. Beetles clattered against bark and leaves. To walk through a forest clearing was to walk through a haze of wings, soft, constant, everywhere. The air itself seemed alive, always in motion, always humming. Above the creatures, the sky told its own story. Weather moved across Pangea in great sweeps. Winds gathered over the endless ocean of Panthalassa, then struck the coasts with force. Storms grew vast, travelling for hundreds of miles without barrier. Clouds piled high, dark and heavy, until rain poured over forests, swamps and deserts alike. Imagine standing on the edge of the supercontinent as a storm approached. The horizon darkens. The air thickens. Winds pick up, carrying the scent of salt and rain. Then the sky cracks open, lightning flashing, thunder rolling across the land, rain falling in sheets. Rivers swell, lowlands flood, swamps rise, and still the storm continues for hours, sometimes days, before at last it drifts away, leaving silence in its wake. The storms of Pangea were powerful, shaped by the size of the land, by the heat of the sun, by the endless stretch of ocean around it. To the creatures below, they were simply life. To us, they were forces vast and overwhelming, reminders of Earth's restless energy. And when night fell, the skies transformed again. There were no cities then, no lights to dim the stars, no fires beyond the small glow of volcanoes. The night sky of Pangea was pure, black and endless, scattered with stars so bright they seemed to shimmer against the earth itself. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens, a river of light mirrored faintly in rivers and lakes below. Constellations we know today were there, though no eyes named them, no minds traced their patterns. On clear nights, the stars burned steady. On others, auroras flickered near the poles, green and red lights dancing silently across the sky. The moon drifted through its phases, pulling tides in Panthalassa, guiding the rhythms of the ocean. And sometimes comets streaked overhead, their tails glowing, leaving creatures below unaware of the wonders above. Imagine lying in the desert heart of Pangea on such a night. The air cool after a long day of heat, the ground still warm beneath you. Above, stars stretch from horizon to horizon, so many, so sharp that you feel as though you are floating among them. No sound but the faint call of a reptile, the hum of insects, the whisper of wind across sand. The universe feels vast and yet close, endless and yet intimate. The skies of Pangea were both stage and story. They carried the storms that shaped the forests. They fed the rivers, flooded the swamps, carved the deserts. They gave flight to insects and pterosaurs, creatures that filled the air with motion. And at night, they offered silence, beauty, wonder, a reminder that life on Earth has always been small beneath the stars, and yet always part of something greater. This was the sky in the age of Pangea. Beneath the skies of Pangea, beyond the forests, the deserts, the swamps, stretched the oceans. Vast, unbroken, endless. They surrounded the supercontinent like a mirror, reflecting its shape, feeding its rivers, shaping its storms. To stand on the edge of Pangea and look outward was to face infinity. Water stretching in every direction, horizon melting into sky. This great ocean was called Panthalassa, the universal sea. It was larger than any ocean today, wider than the Pacific, deeper than the Atlantic, reaching around the world in a single unbroken expanse. Waves rose and fell, winds carried storms across its surface, currents flowed endlessly beneath. It was the cradle of life as much as the land, a world of its own, filled with creatures both ancient and strange. And within Pangea itself, another sea formed, a smaller body of water cradled between the northern and southern halves of the continent. This was the Tethys Sea, shallow in places, deep in others. It stretched across what would one day become the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. Its waters carried warmth. Its shores were lined with swamps and forests. Its depths sheltered creatures that would never set foot on land. Close your eyes and imagine standing at the shore of Panthalassa. The air is sharp with salt. Waves crash against cliffs, spraying mist into the wind. The horizon is vast, empty of ships, empty of islands. Only water, only movement, only the endless song of the sea. Now step into the water. Beneath the surface, light fades quickly. Schools of fish dart in shimmering clouds, their scales flashing silver and blue. Ammonites drift slowly, their coiled shells spinning as they rise and fall with the current. Their tentacles wave gently, feeling, searching, feeding. They are survivors. Their ancestors once ruled the seas, and their descendants will vanish long before our own age. But here, in the waters of Pangea, they thrive. And deeper still, shadows move. Sharks patrol silently, their bodies sleek, their fins cutting the water with ease. They have already been here for millions of years, and they will remain long after. Ancient, unchanging, masters of the sea. Then something larger. An ichthyosaur, its body shaped like a dolphin, its snout long, its teeth sharp. It glides swiftly, chasing fish, its tail moving side to side with power. It bursts upward, breaking the surface for air, before diving again into the depths. Nearby, a plesiosaur drifts, its neck long, its head small, its flippers wide. It moves slowly, gracefully, searching for prey near the surface. The ocean belongs to them as much as the forests belong to the dinosaurs. The Tethys Sea tells a different story. Its waters are warmer, shallower in places, rich with coral-like reefs. Here, life flourishes in colour. Small fish weave through ancient sponges. Crustaceans crawl along the sand, their shells ridged, their legs quick. Trilobites, older still, cling to rocks, their bodies segmented, their eyes compound. Rays drift along the seabed, their wide bodies stirring the sand. And above them, pterosaurs skim the surface, their shadows fleeting against the water as they snatch fish in their jaws. Imagine floating here, weightless in the Tethys Sea. The water warm, the light golden, the creatures around you strange and yet familiar. A turtle-like reptile swims past, its flippers slow and steady. Schools of fish flash in sudden motion, scattering as a predator glides through. You are part of the rhythm, part of the endless breathing of the sea. And when night falls, the ocean changes again. At the surface, waves shimmer with the glow of bioluminescent plankton, faint sparks of green and blue drifting in the dark. Below, the water cools. Shadows deepen. The hunters move silently, guided by senses beyond sight. The sea at night is vast, mysterious, alive in ways we can only imagine. The oceans of Pangea were not quiet. They roared with storms, crashed against cliffs, carved coastlines. They carried creatures across distances greater than any land could hold. They shaped weather, guided climate, fed rivers, gave rise to clouds. They were both giver and taker, feeding the forests with rain, flooding coasts with storms, swallowing land as the continents shifted. And always, they held life. From the smallest plankton drifting with the current, to the largest reptiles diving through the depths, Panthalassa and the Tethys Sea were worlds entire. To walk across Pangea was to see deserts, forests, swamps and mountains. But to enter the water was to step into another universe. This was the ocean, in the age of Pangea. In the beginning, Pangea's creatures were small. Amphibians in the swamps, reptiles in the forests, insects humming in the skies. But as time moved forward, as millions of years passed, something extraordinary happened. The small, swift reptiles of the forests began to change. They grew stronger, faster, bolder. And from them arose the dinosaurs. At first they were not giants. They were lean, quick, fragile-looking, creatures the size of dogs or deer, darting between ferns, hunting insects, feeding on small reptiles. But over generations they grew. They adapted to the forests, to the deserts, to the swamps. They learned to walk upright, to run swiftly, to hunt in packs. They became more than survivors. They became rulers. Imagine standing in a clearing on Pangea, the air warm, the ground soft with fallen needles. From the trees, a small dinosaur appears, its body balanced on strong legs, its tail stretched out behind for balance, its head turned sharply, its eyes bright. It pauses, listening, then darts forward, chasing something hidden in the ferns. Its movements are quick, precise, full of purpose. This is no longer the fragile reptile of the early days. This is the future, a creature on its way to dominance. As the breakup of Pangea began, the world opened new doors for these dinosaurs. Continents that had once been joined started to drift apart. Oceans widened, climates shifted, forests changed, and in each new environment, dinosaurs adapted. Some grew larger, towering giants feeding on conifers, moving slowly across plains. Others grew smaller, swifter, hunters stalking prey through forests and swamps. By the middle of the Mesozoic era, dinosaurs filled every niche. There were long-necked sauropods, their bodies massive, their necks sweeping across trees to strip leaves in great swaths. There were sharp-toothed theropods, predators with claws and jaws built for the hunt. There were armored dinosaurs, their backs covered in plates, their tails tipped with clubs or spikes. There were horned dinosaurs with crests rising from their skulls like shields. Each continent, as it drifted, carried its dinosaurs with it. In South America, unique species evolved. In Africa, others took different paths. In Asia, predators grew sleek and fast. In North America, giants roamed the plains. The separation of land, the very breakup of Pangea, created diversity. Where once there had been one connected population, now there were many, each adapting to its own world. But imagine them still, in the time when Pangea remained whole, forests echoing with their calls, swamps stirring with their movements, deserts marked by their tracks, herds of sauropods moving slowly across valleys, their long necks swaying like ships on water, packs of theropods hunting together, their eyes sharp, their movements coordinated, small, feathered dinosaurs darting through undergrowth, quick as birds, their bodies light, their calls shrill. The world of Pangea, once ruled by amphibians and reptiles, now belonged to the dinosaurs, and yet they were not alone. Alongside them, other creatures thrived. Pterosaurs filled the skies, soaring above forests, diving for fish. Crocodile-like reptiles lingered in rivers, their bodies half submerged, their jaws waiting in silence. Mammal-like creatures, small and secretive, scurried through the undergrowth, living in the shadows of giants. The ecosystems of Pangea were vast, each creature playing its part, each moment adding to the balance. Life then was both fragile and powerful. Fragile, because extinction was always near, a storm, a drought, a volcanic eruption could wipe out entire groups. Powerful, because life always returned, always adapted, always found a way forward. Dinosaurs, more than any others, embodied this resilience. They spread into every environment, filled every role, became the very symbol of Earth's strength. But even they were shaped by the land itself. As Pangea split, new oceans divided populations. New mountains rose. New climates emerged. Dinosaurs on one side of a rift became different from those on the other. Evolution accelerated. Variety blossomed. The breakup of Pangea did not end their reign. It made them stronger, more diverse, more extraordinary. Close your eyes and picture it. A valley, green and wide, with rivers winding slowly to the sea. In the distance, a herd of sauropods moves, their bodies immense, their steps shaking the ground. Closer, a pack of predators stalks the shadows, waiting for an opportunity. Overhead, pterosaurs glide, their wings stretched against the sky. And beneath the trees, small mammals move silently, unseen, yet carrying within them the seeds of the future. This was Pangea in its later years, a land alive with giants, a world reshaped by drifting continents, a stage where dinosaurs rose to dominate the earth. They would rule for millions of years. And though Pangea itself would vanish, their legacy would remain, written in stone, pressed into fossils, carried forward into memory. This was the age of giants, the age of dinosaurs, the gift of Pangea's endless transformation. For all its beauty, Pangea was not a gentle place. Beneath its forests, beneath its deserts, beneath its swamps and coasts, the earth was restless. The supercontinent was vast, but it was fragile. The land seemed solid, but deep within, Forces stirred, pressures built, fire gathered, and when those forces broke through, the world above changed in an instant. Volcanoes dotted the land, some small, their smoke drifting quietly into the sky, others vast, their eruptions violent, their lava flowing for miles. To stand near one was to feel the earth itself alive, the ground trembling, the air heavy with ash, the sky darkening as fire rose from below. Whole valleys could vanish beneath lava. Forests could burn. Rivers could boil away. And yet, after the destruction, new life always returned. Volcanic soil was rich, feeding plants, building new forests, offering fresh ground for creatures to explore. But not all eruptions were brief. Sometimes the earth opened wide, and fire poured out, not for days, not for weeks, but for years. These were the great flood basalts eruptions that covered hundreds of miles, filling the air with smoke, choking the sky with ash. The climate changed. Sunlight dimmed. Temperatures fell. Plants withered. Creatures starved. Entire species vanished. One such eruption marked the end of Pangea's earliest age, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. Around 200 million years ago, vast volcanic fields erupted as the continent began to split. For thousands of years, the Earth shook with fire. Carbon dioxide and ash filled the skies. Oceans turned acidic. Climates shifted wildly. Many creatures could not endure. Amphibians that had once ruled the swamps disappeared. Reptiles that had once thrived dwindled to nothing. And yet, through this chaos, the dinosaurs survived. They stepped into the silence left behind, and from it their reign began. But volcanoes were not the only danger. The climate of Pangea was unpredictable, extreme, relentless. The vast deserts at its centre were harsh, burning by day, freezing by night. The coasts, though fertile, were battered by storms that could last for weeks. In the north and south, ice pressed against the land, carving valleys, shaping mountains, grinding forests away. No place on Pangea was safe from the mood of the earth. Drought struck the interior. Rivers dried. Plants shriveled. Animals wandered farther, searching for water. Many perished. Floods followed storms, sweeping across valleys, drowning swamps, uprooting trees. Forests that had stood for centuries could vanish in a single season. Life was never still. It rose and fell with the land, with the water, with the sky. And sometimes, silence. Extinctions came not with fire or flood, but with quiet change. A shift in temperature, a slow cooling or warming, a gradual loss of food. Populations dwindled, until at last only bones remained. These bones sank into mud, into sand, into stone, waiting millions of years to tell their story. Close your eyes and imagine standing on Pangea in one of its darker moments. The sky above is not blue but grey. Ash falls like snow, coating leaves, covering rivers, choking the air. The sun is hidden. The land feels still. Insects lie silent. Forests are quiet. The world is not dead, but it is waiting, holding its breath, enduring. And slowly, after years, after centuries, the ash settles, the sky clears, and green returns. Life always returns. The dangers of Pangea shaped everything. They ended some stories and began others. Without the volcanic extinctions, dinosaurs might never have risen. Without the shifting climates, life might never have adapted, never have grown more diverse. Destruction was not the end, but part of the cycle, part of the endless rhythm of Earth. So when we imagine Pangea, we must imagine not only the forests and deserts, the swamps and seas, but also the fire, the storms, the silence. We must see the world both in its beauty and in its danger. For it was through both that life moved forward. This was Pangea, restless, fragile, dangerous, alive. When Pangea began to split, it did not break apart all at once. The first great division was between its northern half and its southern half. Two vast lands, each with its own character, its own climate, its own life. To the north, Laurasia. To the south, Gondwana. Let us drift now into the northern world, into Laurasia. Laurasia stretched wide across the upper latitudes of Earth. It held what would one day become North America, Europe, and Asia. Its climates were diverse, forests thick with conifers, coasts lined with swamps, deserts spreading inland. Mountains rose where continents had collided long before. Rivers wound their way slowly to the sea. The forests of Laurasia were immense. Conifers towered, their needles whispering in the wind. Beneath them, cycads and ferns spread in green waves, covering the ground in endless patterns. The air smelled of resin, damp earth and rain. Here, dinosaurs found shelter. Some grazed on leaves, stripping branches with their teeth. Others hunted in the shadows, their claws scratching against roots, their eyes sharp. Imagine walking quietly through one of these forests. Light filters softly through the canopy. Insects hum in the air. A small herd of early herbivorous dinosaurs feeds near the riverbank, their bodies low, their movements cautious. Suddenly, from the trees, a predator appears. Slender, fast, its eyes locked on its prey. The forest holds its breath before the chase begins. Further inland, Laurasia held deserts as well. Dry, silent, vast. The heat pressed down during the day. The cold crept in at night. Reptiles scuttled between stones, leaving faint tracks in the sand. Plants clung to life. Low shrubs, scattered, enduring against the wind. The deserts of Laurasia were harsh, but even here life persisted. And then, the mountains. Some ranges had been formed long before, when smaller continents collided to create Pangea. Their peaks rose high, their slopes covered in forests. Rivers ran down their sides, feeding valleys below. In these mountains, climates shifted quickly. Warm forests at the base, cool winds at the peaks, snow in the highest places. Life adapted to each layer, each zone, each challenge. But perhaps the most defining feature of Laurasia was its position. Closer to the northern pole, it felt the touch of cooler climates. Winters brought cold. Ice pressed against its edges. Seasons were more distinct here. Warm summers, harsh winters, cycles of change that shaped the rhythm of life. Creatures adapted. Some grew larger, able to endure the cold. Others migrated southward, when food grew scarce. The passage of time was written not only in years, but in seasons. And all around, the seas shaped the edges. The Tethys Sea to the south. Panthalassa to the west. Their waves carried storms, their winds carried rain, their tides pulled at rivers. The coasts of Laurasia were alive, swamps thick with insects, estuaries teeming with fish, wetlands echoing with the calls of amphibians. Close your eyes and imagine standing on one of those coasts. The sun is low, the sky painted with red and gold. A pterosaur glides overhead, its wings cutting the air. In the shallows, fish flash silver as they leap. Beyond, the ocean stretches to the horizon. The air is filled with salt, with the cries of distant creatures, with the hum of life. Laurasia was a land of contrast. Forests and deserts, mountains and coasts, cold winters and warm summers. It was a place of change, of rhythm, of endless adaptation. And it was here, in the northern half of Pangea, that many dinosaurs first rose to power. Swift hunters, massive grazers, agile flyers. Laurasia was their stage. But to the south, Gondwana told another story. Gondwana was larger still, stretching across what would one day become South America, Africa, Antarctica, India, and Australia. Its climates were different, its creatures unique, its lands shaped by forces of their own. A southern world, vast and mysterious. We will journey there next into Gondwana. South of the Tethys Sea, beyond the rift that divided Pangea in two, stretched the vast land of Gondwana. Larger than Laurasia, broader, heavier, sprawling across much of the southern hemisphere. Gondwana was immense, a land that would one day fragment into South America, Africa, Antarctica, India, and Australia. To imagine Gondwana is to imagine diversity. Its climates shifted from burning deserts near its center to steaming forests along its coasts, to icy plains in the far south. It was a continent of extremes, and a continent that shaped life in profound ways. Step first into its northern reaches. Here, the land that would one day become Africa spread wide beneath the sun. Deserts rolled across its surface, red sands, stone plateaus, dry winds sweeping endlessly. The heart of this region was harsh, but near its edges rivers cut through the land, feeding valleys where life flourished. Forests clung to these waterways, rich with conifers and ferns, alive with insects and reptiles. Dinosaurs, too, small at first, hunted in these margins, darting between shadows, feeding along the water's edge. Move further south, and Gondwana changes. The land that would one day be South America was lush, fertile, heavy with rain. Swamps spread wide, steaming beneath the sun. Conifer forests rose high, their branches catching mist from the rivers below. Here, life was abundant. Amphibians croaked from the water, insects filled the air with sound. Reptiles stalked the undergrowth, and in time some of the largest dinosaurs the world has ever known would rise from this land, giants that shook the earth with their steps. In the far south, Gondwana met the cold. The land that would one day become Antarctica stretched toward the pole. Even then, it felt the grip of ice. Winters were long, summers were brief. Forests of hardy conifers grew slowly, clinging to survival. Creatures adapted to the cold, slower, tougher, able to endure long seasons of darkness. Life here was not about growth, but patience. Each year, the land offered little. Each year, creatures endured. And in the east, Gondwana carried secrets still. The land that would one day become India lay close to Africa then, waiting for the day it would break free, racing north across the ocean, colliding with Asia to raise the Himalayas. Australia, too, clung to Antarctica in these early ages, its forests and swamps still joined to the southern cold, its creatures still part of a greater whole. One day it would drift away, carrying its unique life with it. But in the time of Gondwana, all was united. The creatures of Gondwana were as diverse as its climates. Herds of herbivorous dinosaurs grazed the coasts, their long necks sweeping across the trees. Predators followed, sharp-toothed, swift, their eyes always searching. In the swamps, crocodile-like reptiles drifted silently, their bodies half hidden, their jaws opening in sudden bursts of violence. Insects swarmed, their wings catching the sunlight. Pterosaurs glided overhead, their cries echoing faintly across valleys. And beneath the soil, small mammal-like creatures scurried unnoticed, surviving quietly in the shadows of giants. Imagine standing on the shore of Gondwana, looking out at the Tethys Sea. The air is heavy with salt. The water laps against the sand. Fish flash near the surface. A pterosaur swoops low, catching one in its jaws. Behind you, the forest hums with life, the calls of reptiles, the buzzing of insects, the whisper of wind through conifers. The land feels immense, unbroken, alive in every direction. And yet, like Laurasia, Gondwana was never still. It shifted, slowly, quietly, pulled apart by the same forces that had once joined it. Valleys opened. Rifts deepened. Lakes grew into seas. The land that had been one would, in time, scatter across the globe. South America would drift west. Africa would move north. India would race east. Australia would slip free, carrying with it creatures unlike any others. Antarctica would freeze, locked in ice for millions of years. But in the age of Pangea, Gondwana remained whole, vast, diverse, alive. A southern world echoing with the footsteps of dinosaurs, the hum of insects, the breath of forests, the silence of deserts, the patience of ice. Close your eyes and picture it. The deserts of Africa, red and endless. The swamps of South America, steaming and full of sound. The icy edges of Antarctica, hushed beneath pale light. The drifting lands of India and Australia waiting for their journeys. Gondwana, immense, ancient, alive. This was the southern half of Pangea, a world of extremes, a world of contrasts, a world preparing to shape the future. For millions of years, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south were joined. Two halves of a single world, bound together by land, rivers, forests, deserts, mountains, but the earth is never still. Deep within, heat rises, plates shift, pressure builds, and slowly the rift between them grew wider. What was once a seam became a valley. What was once a valley became a sea. This was the beginning of separation. The Tethya Sea stretched between Laurasia and Gondwana, widening with time. Its waters crept into the land, carving coastlines, feeding storms, shaping climates. Where once creatures could roam freely from north to south, now a barrier began to grow. At first small and narrow sea, shallow, scattered with islands, but slowly, over millions of years, it widened. Populations were cut apart. Species once united began to drift into separate worlds. In Lauref moved along one path. In Gondwana, it moved along another. In the north, climates grew cooler, seasons sharper. Dinosaurs here adapted to change, some growing feather-like coverings, insulating their bodies against cold. Predators became swift, agile, specialized hunters. Forests shifted with the seasons, and creatures followed their rhythm. Life in Laurasia was marked by change, the cycle of warmth and cold, abundance and scarcity. In the south, Gondwana told a different story. Its forests stretched wide, warm and wet in many places. Its deserts burned hot beneath the sun. Its southern reaches felt the breath of ice. Dinosaurs here grew immense, long-necked sauropods that fed on endless conifers, predators large enough to hunt them, armored giants covered in plates and spikes. Life in Gondwana was marked by scale, by vastness, by size, by endurance. Imagine it. In Laurasia, a forest of tall pines, snow falling softly, feathered dinosaurs darting through the branches, their bodies quick, their movements sharp. In Gondwana, a steaming swamp, giants moving slowly, their necks rising above the trees, their steps heavy, shaking the ground. Two worlds, once joined, now drifting apart, shaping life in different ways. As the seas widened, the differences deepened. Insects adapted to new climates. Amphibians clung to shrinking swamps. Reptiles spread into new roles. And dinosaurs flourished everywhere but differently. Laurasian predators grew sleek, fast, efficient. Gondwanan predators grew larger, heavier, built for power. Herbivores in the north moved in herds across plains. Herbivores in the south grew colossal, stripping forests in their path. Evolution responded to the land, the climate, the separation. Even the oceans felt the change. Marine reptiles that swam freely when the continents were one began to diverge. Those in the Tethys Sea evolved into forms suited for shallow, warm waters. Those in Panthalassa adapted to vast open depths. The sea itself became divided, just as the land had. Over millions of years, the gap between Laurasia and Gondwana grew wider. The continents drifted farther. The seas grew deeper. The climates diverged. And the creatures that lived there became strangers to one another. What had once been a single world became two, then many. Close your eyes and picture the moment. On one shore, Laurasia, its forests cool, its skies filled with pterosaurs, its rivers winding north. On the opposite shore, Gondwana, its swamps steaming, its deserts burning, its giants moving slowly across the land. Between them, the widening waters of the Tethya Sea. The horizon stretches endlessly, the two worlds no longer one. This was the legacy of Pangea, not only its unity but its division. For in breaking apart, it gave rise to diversity. It created new worlds, new climates, new opportunities. It split life, and in splitting it, it multiplied it. The Earth was not losing a continent, it was gaining endless possibilities. This was the separation of Laurasia and Gondwana. Between the northern half of Pangea and the southern half stretched a sea, not as vast as Panthalassa, the great ocean that wrapped around the entire planet, but still wide, still powerful, still alive with mystery. This was the Tethys Sea. It was more than just water. It was a boundary, a cradle, a passage between worlds. To its north lay Laurasia, forests of conifers, deserts under cold skies, creatures adapted to change. To its south lay Gondwana, steaming swamps, burning deserts, icy plains, creatures of immense size and strength. And between them, the Tethys Sea breathed, carrying currents, feeding storms, shaping climates, dividing life. Imagine standing on its shore. The water stretches outward, golden in the sunlight, rippling with soft waves. Along the coast, mangrove-like trees spread their roots, dipping into brackish shallows. The air hums with insects. Pterosaurs glide low over the surface, their shadows flickering against the foam. The smell of salt and mud hangs heavy, mingling with the scent of resin from forests beyond. The Tethys Sea was shallow in many places. Its waters warmed quickly beneath the sun. Coral-like reefs grew along its edges, sheltering small fish, crustaceans, mollusks. Sponges anchored to rocks, filtering water. Starfish spread across the seabed, their arms curling slowly. Trilobites, ancient survivors, clung to stones, their bodies segmented, their eyes catching the dim light. Rays glided across sand, stirring clouds that drifted like smoke through the current. Above them, schools of fish flashed silver and blue, their movements sudden, coordinated, like ribbons twisting in water. Ammonites floated among them, their shells coiled, their tentacles drifting, their bodies rising and falling with the tide. They were everywhere, in every sea of the world, but here in the Tethys, they were abundant, countless spirals drifting in the golden light. And then shadows. Reptiles of the sea, vast and silent. Ichthyosaurs glided through open water, sleek and fast, their snouts lined with teeth. Plesiosaurs drifted with long necks weaving, their flippers moving like wings. Some hunted near the surface. Others dove deep, vanishing into the darkness. They were predators, powerful, unchallenged. The sea belonged to them. The coastlines of the Tethys shifted constantly. As the continents drifted apart, the sea widened. Its edges moved north and south, swallowing land, creating new shores, shaping new ecosystems. Swamps became bays. Valleys became estuaries. Forests drowned, their trunks sinking beneath rising water. And in return, new life appeared. The sea fed the land, and the land fed the sea. The climate too was shaped by this inland ocean. Warm air rose from its waters, carrying storms north into Laurasia, south into Gondwana. Rain fell on forests. Rivers swelled. Deserts shrank at the edges, fed by moisture carried inland. The Tethys was not only a sea, it was a lifeline, binding the climates of two halves of the world together. But the Tethys Sea was also a barrier. Animals that once roamed freely across Pangea now found themselves divided. Populations split. Species separated. Over millions of years they grew different. Dinosaurs in Laurasia became unlike those in Gondwana. Reptiles adapted in different ways. Plants spread on one side but not the other. The Tethys divided life, and in dividing it, created diversity. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of this sea. Waves lapping against a sandy shore. The cries of pterosaurs circling overhead. The soft buzz of insects rising from reeds. And beneath it all, the faint, steady rush of tides. The breathing of earth itself. At night, the Tethys transformed. The surface shimmered with the glow of plankton. Tiny sparks of green and blue drifting in black water. Schools of fish glowed faintly as they moved, their bodies outlined in light. Shadows of larger creatures passed silently beneath, their shapes breaking the glow. The air above was filled with stars mirrored in the water below, until sea and sky seemed one. The Tethys Sea endured for millions of years. It grew wider as Laurasia and Gondwana drifted farther apart. It deepened, its waters filling new valleys, covering new lands. In time, its northern edges would shrink, fragment, vanish, leaving only remnants, seas we know today like the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Caspian. But in the age of Pangea, it was vast, unbroken, alive. It was a sea of change, a sea of division, a sea that shaped the course of life. Picture it once more. The shallows alive with reefs and sponges, bright with schools of fish. The mid-waters drifting with ammonites, filled with shadows of hunters. The deep silent, endless. Above, the cries of pterosaurs, the hum of insects, the whisper of wind. The Tethys Sea, breathing between Laurasia and Gondwana, carrying the future within its waves. This was the heart of Pangea's division. This was the Tethys Sea. The story of Pangea is not only a story of land and sea, but also a story of endings and beginnings. Nowhere is this clearer than in the great transition between the Triassic and Jurassic periods, a time when the Earth trembled, when climates shifted, when species vanished, and when dinosaurs, small at first, fragile at first, began their long journey to dominance. Close your eyes and let us drift backward, deep into time. The Triassic period is ending. Pangea is whole, still stretching across the Earth, though already cracks run through it. The deserts of its heart burn under a relentless sun. The coasts are wet and fertile, forests rising thick along rivers. The swamps hum with insects, the skies shimmer with wings, the oceans are alive with shadows. And yet, beneath this life, something dark is stirring. Volcanoes rumble. The land shakes, smoke drifts into the sky. Across hundreds of miles, great rift zones open, where Pangea is beginning to tear itself apart. From these rifts, fire pours upward. Lava flows, spreading across valleys. Ash falls, darkening the skies. For days, for weeks, the sun disappears, hidden behind clouds of smoke. The Earth is restless. This was the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. Lava did not simply erupt from mountains, it spilled across whole regions, covering them in sheets, layer after layer. The air filled with gases, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, changing the climate, choking the atmosphere. Rain turned acidic. Oceans grew unstable. Life, already fragile, began to collapse. Species that had thrived for millions of years began to vanish. Many amphibians disappeared. Reptiles that had once dominated shrank in number. Entire groups of animals faded from the earth, their stories ending in silence. The Triassic period was closing, not gently, not slowly, but with fire, with smoke, with loss. And yet, through this destruction, some creatures endured. Among them were the dinosaurs. Small still, scattered still, but survivors. They had advantages. They walked upright, their bodies balanced, their lungs efficient, their movements swift. Where other reptiles struggled, they adapted. Where amphibians faltered, they pressed forward. And in the empty spaces left behind, in the forests, in the swamps, in the plains, they grew. Picture it, a forest clearing just after the eruption has passed. Ash still hangs in the air, coating the ground in grey. The trees are scarred, their trunks blackened, their branches bare. Silence lingers. Then, a movement. A small dinosaur steps carefully from the shadows. It looks around, alert, cautious, its tail stretched behind for balance. It searches the ground, scratching through the ash for food. Around it the forest is broken, but not dead. Ferns are already returning, their fronds pushing up through the dust. Insects buzz faintly, survivors of the storm. Life is returning, and the dinosaur is ready. This was the beginning of the Jurassic period, a new age. The Earth was still restless, still breaking, still shifting, but the world was open now. The extinction that had ended the Triassic had cleared the stage, and onto that stage stepped the dinosaurs. They grew larger. They grew stronger. In the forests of Laurasia, swift predators darted between trees, hunting small reptiles and mammals. In the swamps of Gondwana, herbivores grazed, their bodies heavier, their necks longer, stripping leaves from tall conifers. Herds began to form, moving across plains. Packs began to hunt together, coordinated, relentless. At the same time, the skies changed. Pterosaurs flourished, gliding high above forests and rivers. Some grew larger, their wingspans stretching wide, their cries echoing across valleys. The air, once filled only with insects, now belonged to reptiles as well, a new balance of sky and ground. And in the oceans, life adapted too. Marine reptiles, survivors of the extinction, spread across Panthalassa and the Tethys Sea. Ichthyosaurs grew sleek and fast, their bodies streamlined for speed. Plesiosaurs, with long necks and powerful flippers, became lords of the shallows. Ammonites, though many species vanished, rebounded in vast numbers, their shells spiraling, their forms filling the seas. The Triassic-Jurassic transition was not simply an ending. It was a transformation. The earth had burned. The skies had darkened. The seas had changed. But life had endured, and in enduring it had evolved. Imagine walking through the forests of the early Jurassic. The ground is damp, covered in moss and ferns. The air smells of resin, of earth, of rain. A herd of small herbivorous dinosaurs moves quietly, their bodies low, their tails swaying. Above them, dragonflies drift, their wings catching the light. From the shadows, a predator steps forward, slender and fast. The herd scatters, their calls sharp, their bodies vanishing into the undergrowth. The predator lunges, teeth flashing, claws extended. The chase is swift, violent, but brief. Then silence again. The forest returns to stillness. This was daily life after the extinction, new patterns forming, new balances struck. The earth had shifted, and life had shifted with it. And still, beneath it all, Pangea was breaking. The rifts that had opened during the Triassic continued to widen. The Atlantic Ocean was being born. Laurasia and Gondwana were drifting apart. The very stage on which life played was changing, slowly, endlessly. And with every shift of land, with every rise of sea, new challenges arose. Dinosaurs adapted. They spread. They became the rulers of this new world. Close your eyes and picture the earth in this moment. The desert still vast, the forests returning, the swamps steaming, the seas alive with spirals and shadows, volcanoes rumbling, mountains rising, continents drifting. And in the midst of it all, dinosaurs, small, swift, resilient, stepping into the silence left by extinction, beginning their long reign. This was the Triassic-Jurassic transition. A world ending. A world beginning. The fire of destruction, giving way to the green of renewal. This was Earth in the age of Pangea. The Triassic had ended. The Earth had burned, and from the ashes the Jurassic began. Pangea was still immense, still stretching across the globe, but it was changing. Slowly, steadily, cracks widened, seas deepened, climates shifted, and life was flourishing. The dinosaurs that had once been small, quick, fragile, now grew into giants. They filled the forests, the swamps, the plains. They became hunters, grazers, rulers of the land. The age of dinosaurs had begun, and it would last for more than 150 million years. Imagine walking through a Jurassic forest in Laurasia. The air is warm, damp, heavy with the smell of pine and earth. Conifers tower above, their branches whispering in the breeze. Ferns cover the ground, fronds curling in endless patterns. And there in the clearing, a herd of long-necked sauropods. Their necks sweep across the trees like living cranes. Their bodies are massive, their tails swaying slowly as they feed. Each step shakes the earth. Each breath seems to move the air itself. Close your eyes and picture it. A forest alive with giants. Their calls echo softly, deep and resonant. They move slowly, but with purpose. They strip whole branches of leaves in a single sweep. Their young follow beside them, smaller, fragile, but already immense. This is their world, and they are its masters. But where there are giants, there are hunters. In the shadows, theropods prowl. Sleek, fast, eyes sharp. Some hunt alone, waiting in silence, striking with speed. Others move in packs, their calls sharp, their movements coordinated. They follow the herds, waiting for weakness, for opportunity. To hear their cries is to hear the forest hold its breath. To see them lunge is to see violence perfected. The forests themselves were changing. Conifers still ruled, tall, resin-scented, evergreen. Cycads grew thick, their leaves stiff, their trunks low. Ferns spread wide across the ground. But something new was beginning to appear. The first true flowering plants. Small at first, fragile at first, but different. They brought colour, they brought scent, they brought speed to reproduction. In time they would transform the world. But here, in the Jurassic, they were only beginning, quiet sparks of what would come. And the oceans were alive as never before. Panthalassa still stretched endlessly, but now it held giants of its own. Ichthyosaurs darted like living torpedoes, their bodies sleek, their eyes wide, their teeth sharp. Plesiosaurs drifted gracefully, their long necks weaving through the water, their flippers moving like wings. Pliosaurs, heavier, stronger, ruled the depths, their jaws vast enough to swallow prey whole. Ammonites filled the seas, their coiled shells drifting in spirals, their tentacles trailing. The oceans of the Jurassic were no less dangerous, no less alive than the forests above. The skies too had changed. Pterosaurs flourished, growing larger, stranger, more diverse. Some small wings fluttering like sparrows, others vast wingspans stretching wider than a man is tall. They soared above oceans, diving for fish. They glided above forests, their shadows sweeping across herds below. They nested on cliffs, their cries echoing over valleys. The air belonged to them. And through it all, Pangea was still drifting. The Atlantic widened, little by little. The Tethys Sea deepened, carrying storms across its waters. Laurasia and Gondwana moved farther apart, their climates diverging, their creatures growing ever more distinct. Evolution accelerated, each land shaping its own path. Imagine now, a swamp in Gondwana. The air is thick, hot, steaming. Ferns rise taller than a man. Horsetail plants stretch upward, their hollow stems shimmering with moisture. Insects buzz in clouds, their wings flashing in the light. From the water, a massive crocodile-like reptile slides forward, jaws wide, eyes steady. On the banks, small dinosaurs scatter, their cries sharp, their tails whipping as they run. Overhead, pterosaurs wheel in the heavy air, their wings glinting in the sun. The swamp hums with life, endless, restless, alive. The Jurassic world of Pangea was a place of abundance, but also of danger. For every herbivore, there was a predator. For every moment of calm, a storm. Volcanoes still rumbled. Earthquakes still shook. Forests burned, only to regrow. Swamps flooded, only to dry again. The land was never still. And yet, it was beautiful. Close your eyes once more. Hear the low call of a sauropod echoing across a valley. Hear the sharp cry of a theropod from the shadows. Hear the buzz of insects, the whisper of wind through conifers, the steady rush of a river feeding the sea. Smell the resin of trees, the damp earth, the salt of the ocean carried inland. Feel the ground tremble beneath the steps of giants. See the sky alive with wings, the ocean alive with shadows, the land alive with movement. This was Pangea in the Jurassic, a continent in transition, a world in bloom, an earth reshaped by life and by fire. The dinosaurs had risen. The oceans were filled with monsters. The skies were ruled by wings. The forests were alive with green. The land was still drifting, still dividing, still changing. But for now, for this age, life flourished. This was the Jurassic world of Pangea, a world of giants, a world of endless motion, a world alive in every breath. The Jurassic world of Pangea was a land alive with giants. The forests whispered with their footsteps, the plains trembled with their weight, the swamps stirred as they passed. These were the sauropods, long-necked, heavy-bodied, patient grazers that rose above the trees, feeding on a world of green. Imagine a valley at dawn. Mist drifts low, curling between ferns. The air is cool, damp, filled with the scent of resin and wet earth. In the distance, a sound, low, deep, resonant. The call of a sauropod, echoing across the plain. Slowly, shapes emerge from the haze. Immense bodies, necks reaching high, tails swaying low. Each step shakes the ground. Each breath steams in the morning air. Close your eyes and picture them. A herd of giants, moving together, steady, unhurried. Their necks stretch into the trees, stripping branches with ease. Their tails swing gently behind, heavy as whips, brushing the ground. Young ones walk in the center, smaller, fragile, guarded by the bodies of adults. The herd moves slowly, but constantly, always searching for food, always moving toward water, always following the rhythm of the land. Their world is one of abundance, but also one of danger. For in the shadows, predators wait. The theropods of the Jurassic were swift, cunning, hungry. Some small, their bodies built for speed. Others large, their jaws wide, their teeth sharp. They moved through the forests in silence, eyes watching, muscles tense. They followed the herds, not rushing, not reckless, but patient, waiting for weakness. A sick animal, a young one that strays too far. A moment when the herd is distracted. Picture it now. The herd moves across the plain, unaware. From the trees, eyes glint. A theropod steps forward, slender, powerful, balanced on strong legs. It lowers its head, watching, calculating. Behind it, more shapes move. A pack. Together they spread, surrounding. The herd senses danger. Their calls grow sharper, deeper, urgent. The adults close ranks, circling their young, tails raised, ready to strike. The air grows tense, every sound sharper, every movement heavy with meaning. Then, a rush. The predators charge. Dust rises. The herd scatters. The ground shakes with the thunder of footsteps. The hunt begins. This was the rhythm of life in the Jurassic predator and prey, hunter and hunted, a balance as old as time. The sauropods could grow immense, but their size alone did not save them. The theropods were clever, fast, relentless. Some hunts failed, others succeeded. And in that endless struggle, life carried on. The forests themselves played their part. Conifers rose high, their branches thick with needles. Cycads grew beneath, their leaves stiff, their seeds heavy. Ferns covered the ground, soft and green. Horsetail plants clustered near rivers, their hollow stems glistening with moisture. Food for the giants, cover for the hunters. The forest was not just backdrop, it was part of the story. Now step into a swamp. The air is thicker here, heavy with heat, alive with the hum of insects. Dragonflies drift, their wings catching light. Frogs call from the shallows, their voices echoing. In the distance, the splash of something large entering the water, perhaps a crocodile-like reptile waiting in silence. Along the edge, a sauropod lowers its neck, drinking slowly. Ripples spread across the surface. The herd stirs, uneasy. The swamp is rich but dangerous. Every step could mean survival or loss. And always above the skies. Pterosaurs circle, their wings stretched wide, their shadows moving across the ground. They watch the herds, though they do not hunt them. They search instead for fish, for small reptiles, for insects rising in clouds. Their cries echo, high and sharp, mixing with the low calls of the sauropods and the sharp barks of theropods. The air itself feels alive with sound. Life for the sauropods was constant movement. They ate endlessly, conifers stripped bare, cycads gnawed down to their trunks, ferns pulled up by the roots. A single herd could strip acres in a day. And so they walked, always onward. From valley to valley, from forest to forest, from river to river. They followed the seasons, the rains, the growth of plants. Their migrations shaped the land itself, paths carved by their footsteps, forests regrown where they had passed. And where the sauropods went, the predators followed. Their lives were bound together, Prey and hunter always moving, always adapting, always listening for the other. Close your eyes once more. Picture the plain at dusk. The sun sinks low, casting long shadows. The herd settles near a river, their massive bodies dark against the fading light. Their calls soften, deep and low, carrying through the air. The young huddle close, tails curled, eyes heavy. In the distance, a predator calls sharp, chilling, echoing across the valley. The herd shifts uneasily. The night will not be safe. But still, they rest. The stars rise. The forest hums. The world breathes. This was the life of giants, the daily rhythm of sauropods and their hunters, a world of movement, a world of struggle, a world alive in every moment. This was Pangea, in the heart of the Jurassic. In the northern half of Pangea, in Laurasia, the land opened wide into plains. Endless stretches of grassless earth, for grasses did not yet exist, but covered instead with ferns, cycads, low shrubs, and stands of towering conifers scattered like islands across the horizon. The air here was dry at times, wet at others, carried by winds sweeping across valleys without barrier. And across this open land, dinosaurs moved, not just in small groups, not just in families, but in herds vast, thundering herds of herbivores moving together like rivers of life. Their footsteps shook the ground. Their calls carried for miles. Dust rose in clouds as they passed. The plains of Laurasia were alive with motion. Imagine it now, dawn spreading across the horizon, the first light catching the trunks of distant conifers, a hush across the plain, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves. Then a sound, low, deep, rolling through the air. The call of a herd, waking, stirring, preparing to move. Slowly the shapes emerge. Dozens of long-necked sauropods, their bodies immense, their necks rising high into the light. Smaller herbivores weave between them, swift and cautious. The herd begins to move, their steps heavy, steady, endless. The young walk close to their mothers, guarded from danger. The old keep to the rear, slower but steady. In the center, the strongest, leading the way. The herd is not random. It is ordered, balanced, each creature part of the whole. Together they cross valleys, rivers, plains. They follow the rhythm of the seasons, moving where food is richest, where water is surest. Their path is ancient, carved into the land by generations before them. But where herds go, predators follow. The plains of Laurasia were home to theropods, hunters swift, clever, deadly. They watched from ridges, from forests, from shadows. They waited for stragglers, for weakness, for opportunity. Sometimes they hunted alone, striking quickly. Sometimes they hunted in packs, spreading wide, driving prey into panic. Their cries were sharp, high, chilling, echoing across the plains like warnings carried on the wind. Picture it. The herd moves, steady, calm. The ground trembles with their weight. From the ridge, shadows watch. The hunters are patient, waiting for the moment. A young one strays, an old one lags. Dust rises as the herd shifts. And then silence breaks. The predators charge. Their claws flash. Their jaws snap. The herd calls out, deep, resonant, the ground shaking with their panic. For a moment, chaos. For a moment, violence. Then, quiet again. The herd regroups. The predators retreat, waiting for another chance. Life continues. These plains were not empty. They were alive with smaller creatures too. Early mammals scurried between roots, hidden from giants above. Insects buzzed in clouds, drifting across rivers, rising into the air in shimmering veils. Pterosaurs glided overhead, their shadows passing quickly, their cries sharp. Crocodile-like reptiles lingered near water, their bodies still, their eyes watching. The plains were a stage, and every creature had its part. The climate shaped it all. In summer, the plains grew hot, the rivers shrinking, the plants drying. Herds moved farther, faster, searching for water. Predators grew bolder, desperate for food. Storms rolled across the land, lightning splitting the sky, thunder shaking the ground, rain falling in torrents that turned dust to mud. In winter the air cooled, the nights grew longer, food scarcer, herds tightened, conserving strength, enduring the lean months. The cycle repeated, year after year, season after season, shaping life across the plains. Close your eyes and hear it. The low calls of herds, deep and resonant, carrying across valleys. The sharp cries of predators, high and chilling. The constant hum of insects. The whisper of wind through conifers. The steady rush of rivers feeding the land. Together a symphony of life, played endlessly across the open spaces of Laurasia. And yet, these plains were never still. Beneath them, the earth shifted. The rifts of Pangea widened. The land cracked, pulled slowly apart. Valleys deepened. Lakes formed. Seas crept inland. The plains of Laurasia changed, reshaped, redrawn. But for millions of years they remained the stage for this endless dance. The herds and the hunters, the cycles of plenty and scarcity, the rhythm of life and death. This was Laurasia's open land. A place of giants. A place of predators. A place where survival was written into every step, every call, every breath. This was Pangea, in the north. In the age of dinosaurs. Pangea, one land, one ocean, one world. For more than 100 million years, it was the stage of life. Forests spread. Deserts burned. Swamps steamed. Mountains rose. Oceans swirled around it. Skies filled with wings. Seas filled with shadows. And across its vast surface, creatures moved, lived, hunted, grazed, endured. It was a land of extremes. At its heart, deserts wider than any we know today, red sands glowing under the sun, winds carving stone into silent monuments. Along its coasts, forests thick with conifers, rivers winding, swamps steaming, insects humming. In the far north and far south, ice crept across valleys, winters long, summers brief, forests clinging to survival. Pangea was not gentle, but it was alive. And life flourished. Amphibians in the swamps, reptiles in the forests, insects in the skies, marine reptiles in the oceans, dinosaurs rising from small beginnings into giants that shook the earth, pterosaurs gliding through the air, mammal-like creatures surviving in the shadows, each one finding its place, each one part of the rhythm. Close your eyes and walk once more through its forests. The air damp, cool, resin-scented, ferns curling at your feet, conifers towering above, the calls of dinosaurs echoing in the distance, the hum of insects thick around you. Somewhere nearby, a river, steady, constant. The forest is alive, every breath filled with sound. Now step into its deserts. The air heavy with heat, the ground cracked and dry, silence pressing all around. Then movement. A reptile scurries between rocks. Insects stir as the sun lowers. Night falls quickly. Stars blaze overhead, sharper than you have ever seen. The desert hums with hidden life. Now to its coasts. Waves crashing against cliffs. The cries of pterosaurs echoing overhead. Fish flashing in shallows. Swamps steaming behind, alive with calls. And farther still, the ocean. Panthalassa stretching endlessly, the horizon vanishing into blue. Beneath its surface, ichthyosaurs darting, plesiosaurs drifting, ammonites spiraling, sharks patrolling. The sea is endless, deep, alive, and always danger. Volcanoes rumbling, fire pouring from the earth. Ash-darkening skies, forests burning, rivers boiling, storms rolling across the land, winds tearing trees, lightning splitting the sky, floods sweeping through valleys, ice pressing at the poles, extinctions reshaping life. Pangea was alive but restless, fragile, dangerous. And yet, always, life returned. Always, green pushed up through ash. Always, rivers carved new paths. Always, creatures adapted. Some growing larger, some smaller, some vanishing, some enduring. Life was fragile, yes, but it was also unyielding. Pangea was not forever. Slowly, steadily, cracks spread. Rifts widened. The Atlantic was born. The Tethys Sea grew. Laurasia drifted north. Gondwana drifted south. Africa split from South America. India raced toward Asia. Australia slipped east. Antarctica froze. The one became many. The supercontinent became the world we know today. And yet, even as it broke apart, its legacy endured. The creatures that had roamed its forests adapted to new lands. The dinosaurs spread, evolving into countless forms across separated continents. The oceans filled with life, shaped by currents born in Pangea's rifts. The climates shifted, giving rise to new ecosystems. Every movement of the land carried the past forward. Close your eyes once more and see it. The deserts red and endless. The forests green and humming. The swamps steaming. The mountains sharp. The oceans deep. The skies alive with wings. The land alive with footsteps. The earth alive with breath. This was Pangea, the first great union of continents, the foundation of our modern world. And though it has been gone for more than 175 million years, though its forests have turned to stone, though its creatures lie buried in fossil beds, its story lives on. In the bones we uncover, in the rocks we study, in the very shape of our continents, still drifting, still moving, still carrying the memory of the time when all was one. One day, millions of years from now, the land will join again. A new supercontinent will form, different from Pangea, but born of the same forces, shaped by the same earth. And when it does, life will change again, adapt again, flourish again, for this is the rhythm of our planet. Pangea was only one chapter, but it was a chapter of beauty, of danger, of giants and shadows, of fire and water, of life rising, enduring, transforming. This was Earth in the time of Pangea, and now the land has drifted. The seas have widened, the forests have changed, but the memory remains, soft, silent, eternal. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the world of Pangea drift through your thoughts like a dream of a land both strange and familiar, a world long gone, yet still here, in the stones, in the stars, in the very air we breathe. This was Pangea,